y'all. It's Brigitte Cutshall with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Leo Mars. He is a writer and entrepreneur, and he opened the first breath studio in the US. Can you say hi, Leo?
Hello, happy to be here.
I appreciate it. I like connecting with people like you with a similar background. We take our knowledge for granted, and you probably have a lot of knowledge to share. And the first thing that popped into my mind was what prompted you to do the first breath studio in the US? I was just curious what was going on in your life. Something must have been going on.
Yeah, well, I would say I had it on the tip of my tongue for a while. And then when my grandmother passed, I was flying home from Alaska where my family is. And I had this kind of deep feeling of like, Leo, you need to step into service. And up until that point, I had done a lot of things in my life. And yeah, there's some element of service, but really you need to step into service. Um, I'd had a big breathwork experience several years prior, kind of years before it was kind of trendy, and also like I feel like breath is as close to like a universal foundational practice as it gets. So I felt like this is something that would serve the community.
That's really cool. So you had an actual physical breath studio for people to come to.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah,
that is really unique. And because
yeah.
like me, I'm one of those people. I've had an app that I've used, but it helped remind me. I get little reminders to do it. But
Mhm.
in person, you're also connecting with other people, I would think.
Yes. Yeah, there's a group energy that, I had to close the studio because of COVID. But there's a group energy that, and especially when you've got the right soundtrack and a beautiful stereo and a great guide, there's something about laying down in a group with people and just breathing for an hour. Witnessing everything from like people moving through grief and stuck emotions and trauma, weeping and sweating and yelling to, full body orgasms and like people experiencing bliss, like in many cases they hadn't experienced before. Yeah, it was such a blessing.
It also just made me think it's just reminds you to just we need to slow it down, right? We
Mm-hmm.
Our culture push tries to make us do so much, and I just I never been to the only kind of studio I've been to was more like for yoga and things like
Hmm.
that. But it's sort of similar, but you're focusing just on the breathing and being there in the moment and
Hmm.
focusing, clearing your mind. Is that correct?
Hmm. Yeah, and we did uh, mostly what I would call like a transformative breathing. So like deep, heavy lifting stuff, where you're working through going through all sorts of spaces in your consciousness. Um, and that just added this whole other element of special. Um, really cool. Seeing people come in oftentimes with the weight of the world on their shoulders and leave with a spark in their eye and a bit lighter than they came in.
I like that. It makes me think that the mental health obviously improved uh,
Hmm.
as well. I've noticed that is so important that we are talking about this more in general. The mental health and the breathing is just a really great aspect. I've learned to do, like I mentioned, the deep breathing on an app, but never, they don't have a studio, around me where live. If there is one, I'm not aware of it. But it's just something, a topic we're more open about, I think. And it
Hmm.
affects your mental health and the stress we're holding in and it affects everything in your life. It helps you obviously not react to
Hmm.
situations.
Hmm. And it also is affected by everything we experience in life. It has this um, unique thing about it, where it's they say it's the only function of the autonomic nervous system that we can consciously and unconsciously control.
Right.
So you get cut off in traffic, and you might hold your breath, or your breath is mirroring your mind.
That's true. Yeah, you made me think of that in Atlanta. I'm sure I've held my breath a few times. But
Yeah.
it's every big city's got that. And I think I hope that people are more open to doing this because I think that's just going to help reduce. like you said, the stress, and I never really thought about that, how your breathing is reflecting your mind. I never really thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
So did you
Mm-hmm.
take a course or anything on how to do this, or it was just came natural to you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah, I would say if I have a superpower, it's attracting amazing people. I've always had just like incredible staff. So I curated essentially the city's best facilitators that I could find. So
Oh,
I learned a lot from them, and I went through some of their like teacher trainings when I was hosting on the weekend. But yeah, so I've got a bit of training from some of my teachers. So
well, that's good. But they're definitely have a lot of experience, and we need to appreciate these people. I think back in the day, they were just brushed aside. I thought it like woohoo kind of. I mean, I'm uh, just saying that's how kind of how it was because
mhm,
we're always go go
mhm,
go go go. But now we're realizing we have to be there. We need to enjoy the time that we have, and breathing helps remind you. It's a great
mhm.
reminder. And then what kind of
Yeah.
music do you play? You mentioned the music stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that really was a sign of a good facilitator to me, not only their guidance and their coaching during the sessions, but um, my facilitators would bring in their kind of curated playlists. So they would build playlists and essentially bring that into the studio. What I've done with the app that I've built is I actually learned how to produce music. I I wanted, this is actually my second breathing app, but I wanted more control of the sequencing so that you can really feel like the sequencing is a subconscious cue, or the sounds are a subconscious cue to the breathing. But really, there's so much amazing music out there. There's so much talent. You could just turn on whatever music moves you emotionally. It could even be, it's something like worship music or classical music. Typically, if there's a rhythm that you can breathe to, it makes it a little bit easier.
Probably, right. You don't want to have rock playing. Right.
Yeah. Although I've been in sessions with teachers who were playing rock and metal.
Right. Which is fine. I just
Yeah.
if I have rock music, I'll start jiggling my feet and tapping. That's just that makes me want to start dancing. Um,
Yeah.
well, I think dancing is something I like to do as well. But to me, it's just being in tune with the rhythm of your body. And as you're talking about the breathing and the rhythm, made me think I've learned that I come up with great ideas, even though I'm supposed to be in the moment. I have these great ideas that crop up. I should say crop up. They
Yes.
pop up into my mind.
Yes. Yes.
It, I think it can help solve some problems, right?
Oh man, I've always said, like, I see two different styles of kind of guidance. One is kind of where facilitators are kind of leaned in more on the agony side of the street. So for trauma healing and that genre, and then you kind of have the ecstasy side of the street, agony and ecstasy. And on the ecstasy side of the street, and that's actually one of the my favorite things about the breath are those breakthroughs, are those revelations. When you're breathing rhythmically, you're essentially counteracting the stress response. So our stress response creates that erratic breathing, holding our breath, sometimes not breathing or shallow breathing. But when you breathe rhythmically for a period of time, you're kind of like disarming that defense system, that fear, anxiety, stress. And in that state, not only are you kind of moving the gases around and really flexing your lymphatic system and just moving everything in your body, but those revelations, those insights that can pop to the surface are just gold.
It's yeah, I always, by the way, when I'm do breathing, I do have a notebook nearby because I
Yep.
have to write. Otherwise, I'll forget, right? Because it's
Yep.
usually
Yep.
I will forget. Has nothing to do
Hmm.
with because you want to be calm, but then I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
ideas pop into my head,
Hmm.
and I'm not. Some people record themselves talking, but
Hmm.
I don't think about that. I have to write in
Yeah.
pen and paper. It just
Yep.
sticks with me. I mean, I don't always have a notebook by me, but
Yep.
you can type it in the note section if you have an iPhone, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's actually a feature that I'm going to build into my app in the future, is where you can literally just voice call to your notes. So it will
Ah,
actually, you can You can just capture notes in real time.
That is a great idea. I mean, that really
Yeah.
truly is because I'm one of those people who would use that
Yes.
aspect of it because like I mentioned, I just ideas pop into my head or a memory comes back, right? Something
Mhm.
that has been back of our brain, especially at my age. You have so many memories, and that's kind of why
Yeah.
people make fun of I should say older people, but we have a lot of experiences. And
Mhm.
I think this is a great way to breathe and relax. I love that idea to
Yeah.
make a voice because that way you don't have to stop what you're doing and
Yeah.
type it or write it with a pen and pencil. But I guess I'm just old
Mhm.
school and I was taught to write my memories down with a pen or pencil.
Mhm.
But that's okay. And we all have to deal with the change, right? And I think what you're doing, what popped into my mind as we're talking, you're kind of embracing the technology in a good way to help us
Mhm.
rather than push it to the side. I think some people are wanting to ignore it, but you can't ignore this. And I think AI, we need to use it. Um, I think it's helpful, but we need to use it ethically. That's just
Mhm.
what I think we need to do. And what you're doing is an ethical way to do it to
Yeah.
um, to help us heal or just I don't know how often you're you're recommended to do breathing each day. Is it like a minimum?
Yeah. For me, I've had a daily practice for now probably 6 or 7 years. For me, I have kind of like periods where if I'm going through something challenging, or if I'm feeling creatively blocked, I'll do kind of a longer, deeper, more, different style of breath. Like I'll do the 3-part breath, what I call shifts in the app. But for a daily practice, yeah, I do it daily. In fact, if I hadn't have backed myself up on meetings this morning, I would have done it right before our call. But I have like shorter, very easy to follow flows that are what I would call ideal for a daily breathing practice. But like, the stuff builds up, like, for example, I do this one breath, this sequence that takes me 5 minutes, and I do it before sleep. And it basically, in 5 minutes, because of the sequencing, it will kind of shift me into like newborn baby vibes where I'm just like all my stress for the day. In fact, that's probably one of the best times to do a breathing practice is before bed.
I was going to say that I've done that before. It just deep breathe,
Hmm.
just not. I don't have any kind of technology in my room. You know what I'm saying? The only thing across the room is the clock, right? But
Uh-huh.
I don't have a TV. I just don't, because
Yeah.
all it does is just wake me up. And I have done that.
Yeah.
The deep breathing,
Hmm.
I don't remember what the method's called, but you got to breathe
Hmm.
in and then you hold it and you let it out. And it just is like, boom, it just helps you relax.
Boxed breathing. I
Yeah,
think you're
that's
talking
what
about boxed breathing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I've done. And I also do yoga in the evening
Hmm.
too, because I notice even if it's a day that I don't run, I need to do the yoga at night because I'll feel a little sore the next day. And
Hmm.
it's probably my age, but
Oh, I
you're
feel that.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to do it. And so I do the breathing with the yoga, but then box breathing that you mentioned, it really does help, especially I agree. At the end of the day, it's absolutely
Hmm.
perfect. I
Hmm.
totally stay away from the digital stuff, like I mentioned, the TV. It just is not that wakes my brain up. And if
You, you, yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, if this is one that's really easy to do where you don't need an app or technology, you could try 10 full breaths, ideally in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just letting the air fall out of your mouth, not forcing it. And then on the 10th breath, inhale and hold for about 15, 20 seconds, and then release. Oof. And you will get a really deep clearing. So that's something you can easily remember. It's just 10 breaths, hold on the last one and release. Give that
Yeah,
one a try.
that's true. I kind of want to jump back into the creativity before we started
Yeah.
recording. I love that aspect. I think that is also I think can help reduce stress. Some people like to do it. Like my husband's one of those do-it-yourselfers. He likes to figure things out. Try it that first for some reason rather than hiring someone. So I think that's his way of probably relaxing. So what do you think about the creativity part? I think it's important. So what is your thoughts?
Absolutely. Well, I'm writing this book, The New Creator, Rise of the Mindful Artist in the New Meaning Economy. And really, for me, so as I was telling you before our call, I come from kind of a lineage of more or less like metasystemic philosophers. There's one of my primary teachers is a man named Ken Wilber. His life's work is known as integral theory. And, really it's a synthesis of human knowledge with the attempt to exclude nothing. And in that synthesis, for me, what was always and has been always so clear is that eros or creativity is one of the very most kind of fundamental principles or qualities of the universe. So I believe that creativity is one of, if not the, it's like one of the most like spiritual things we can do. It connects us to life in a way we're making love to life, whether we're building a chair or editing a video, we're in a way we're you could say kind of penetrating life. We're impacting life. So I feel like it's really important for not only mental health, but a sense of fulfillment in life.
I really like your explanation there. That's a perspective I haven't heard before about creativity. It is. It just helps us. It is like love, right? And it helps you be in the moment. I think that's why some of us crave it more than others. And I should say crave it, but it makes I get hungry for it. There you go.
Mhm.
I like to do it, and that's probably why I still do my podcast because I'm learning a lot from other people, and it helps me, and especially as you get a little older, it helps you use your brain, right? Properly. I should say properly, but
Mhm.
you have to keep using it. And I've always been intrigued by being creative. I think it helps solve problems. I never thought about it from the aspect of like the love that you brought up, but that is really, really cool. So is your book, do you know when that's going to come out? I'm just curious because I love books too.
Yeah, yeah. It should be done this fall.
Okay.
I'm about halfway through. Um, it's interesting because I feel like the moment I release it is going to be a heartbreak because things are changing so fast.
Yes.
And on some level, I know, the landscape of creativity, our context for creativity, we're in the process of like synthesizing all of human knowledge on the internet. And
Right.
so the breakthroughs and the understanding we're going to have, even just 6 months from now is going to be beyond where we're at. But yeah, it should be coming out this fall.
That's cool. I definitely gonna read that because I just think, like you said, the context of creativity is changing, and I know a lot of people. My background is in communications and in publishing and business development and all that because I went that path. I like books, right? And publishing, and my mom wanted me to get a degree in finance because I was good at math. I'm like, I don't care. So I found a way. I didn't say it that way to her. Sorry, mom. But I
Yeah.
found a way. I did marketing and economics so I could blend in. The people don't realize in marketing how creative that is. It really truly
Mhm.
is. You have to be creative, and that's a skill set that I had was making people feel safe talking to them. And I've written a few books, but I waited until after my cancer, right? Isn't that silly? I had my sons convince me to do it, and I'm the one that was in the publishing field, and you know how it is. It's just so weird how we promote other people, then we push ourselves back. But I think I needed that. I shouldn't say I needed the cancer, but it was a wake up call, right?
Yeah.
Is that the right word? But but it helps you to find who you are going forward. And
Yeah.
I don't like being called a cancer survivor. I don't like that word. I think I find it to be negative. Um, that's just Bridget. Some people like it. I like to say I'm a thriver or I'm a or a warrior when I'm going through it. I
Yeah.
just, because you got to be strong. And I think writing was helpful. And then I integrated before, I mentioned this before we started recording, that the fundamental aspects, like the breathing, that I started doing that more. I probably was stressing the hell out of myself, Leo, from being in the corporate world. I probably was, and
Yeah.
raising kids. And, but I was trying to be perfect. And that's, that's not how it works out in the long run.
Yeah.
But I've learned to adapt. I think that's what your breathing is. I'm thinking your app is going to help people adapt, and they'll figure out, how to make a change. Correct?
Yeah, I think that's really what it's all about. And there's the way I see it, there's two kind of use cases for breathing. Well, three probably. One is like your everyday breath, right? To live. But then you have the kind of active breathing or breath work that we were just talking about. But then there's breath awareness. And so think about how much more adaptable we are when we're in the present moment, like how much more resources we have. We're in more of a coherent state, heart brain coherence. We're with what is without resisting it when we're present. So we can use the breath, just simple breath awareness, and the sages and masters throughout history have talked about it, but it really works. Like I just discovered the power of breath awareness about 2 years ago, and actually almost wrote a book called Breathe Here Now, which was just a kind of a small coffee table book that's like, presence is this kind of like this, in some ways, this mystical concept. It's this okay, but how do you know when you're present? Well, for me, for many years, well, I'm happier, I'm more eloquent, I'm funny, I like myself, I'm absorbing information and synthesizing it much faster, but I didn't know how to get into that state. With breath awareness, you can just go right there. Just without influencing your breath, just notice your breath. In fact, Eckhart Tolle talks about it in A New Earth. He says, I'm paraphrasing, he says, you can't take a conscious breath and think at the same time. Conscious breathing stops your mind. It's only ever happening right now in your body. So as far as like adaptability goes, man, I mean, I wrote a blog post a couple months ago called The Future is Present, Why Being in the Now is the Future. And it had a lot to do with how much information we're getting and how much modern life is just kind of overwhelming us in a sense with data, with sensory information. And to navigate that, being present is one of the top meta skills as far as adaptability goes.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that it's something we just need to talk more about. And you mentioned like being present. Not we were, my generation is like multitasking constantly. And that's how you're going to mess things up. I should say mess things up. But that's what, there's a lot of people who are, because of COVID, they started working remotely. And then now my understanding is they're having to go into the office and they're resisting that. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I was one of the first people, Leo, who were able to work remotely because email came out. And that was, God, that's really a long time ago. But I remember saying, like, if I have to travel to see the clients, but I have to come to an office. And that was kind of so I convinced them, they're like, yeah. But at the same, there's just so many variables, especially if you're an employee, and what you got to do and what's important to you. And that's kind of why I think some companies need to be open to this. What you're doing, some breath work, take some break if you're in the office. That's kind of why I feel like hopefully I'm making sense. But
Oh,
it's
you're making tons of sense.
it's very, especially if you live in a big city. I feel sorry. I'm just really lucky. I should say lucky. I don't have to go commute long distance, and that in itself can be stressful. I think that's what we need to listen to these people, and we need to integrate it. Even if your company that you work for doesn't want you to do this at work, you can do it before you go to work or when you're driving. We're not driving, when you're at a
Yeah.
stop sign. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to make time for it. And I think it's going to help with your mental health and your stress. And I think it'll help you just move forward in the day, right? Be present and move forward in that day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, we think about, we're in the attention economy. We'll see what that becomes. Um, but the quality of our attention, like we all know what it's like to, be in a, engaging with a project or a task and just feeling like, "Duh." Like the quality of our attention has everything to do with our productivity and all of that.
That's true. I think that people talk about work-life balance. As you're saying that, I think I like the word rhythm better, right?
Mm.
Because it just depends on what's happening in that moment or that, like,
Mhm.
I try to think of that moment. And I'm just so grateful that I don't know where I learned that word from, but I probably was doing some yoga or breath work because I'm like, oh, this is not life balance, your work life. And it's more about creating a rhythm. And I think that's
Mhm.
what your breathing is doing. It's helping
Mhm.
people overall calm down. And I think people need to learn more about this and be open to
Mhm.
it because it
Yeah.
is definitely, like you mentioned, people changes constantly happen, but it seems to be happening at a much faster pace. And I think that's why we need to be aware of what you're doing with
Mhm.
with this app in your studio. So you going to have another physical studio or just the other? I'm
You
just
know,
curious.
it is one of like building spaces that we didn't talk about this beforehand, but in my 20s, I opened a nightclub and restaurant. It was a four-star restaurant, amazing spot. Um, but it's, getting people together, whether that's, for libations and food and just connection or to breathe. I mean, the studio, that experience was the most fulfilling I've had so far. So, as much as I'm like, no, I'm done with retail, COVID kind of scarred me
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Had to close two brick and mortars. It was not the funnest time, but yeah, what I might do, I'm thinking about creating a kind of a touring group breath experience called the Big Breathe.
Oh,
Um, just pack in an auditorium with, a couple hundred people and kind of
kind of
traveling with
like
that.
a right, like a I should say conference, but I think maybe just yeah, like once a year or test it out locally. Why not?
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
people, we just were, in general, we're just so stressed out. And not we, most people don't understand what you're doing. They really, truly don't. And I don't know why that is. But
Yeah.
they're always like in school. I'm thinking that's something that you can weave that into school, right? Why not?
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like a divine comedy of some kind because it's free, it's right under our nose. It's almost like fish swimming in water. Um, it's not until, let's say, one of your fellow fish, you see like the bubbles like whirl off their tail, and you go, oh, wait a minute, what's that?
Right.
We're in water?
Right. Well, I know this. I'm just trying to give you an idea. Maybe go to if you haven't done this yet, I don't know if high school will be worth it or not, or the college, and just give I think you should give speeches on this. That's just kind of what I should have speech. Why not? And then talk about that. And we
Hmm.
just need to talk about this more. And I think the younger generation does need the wisdom that you've gone through, or I should say, gone through what you're learning. And I think that's why I like talking to the younger generation as well. People call me a walking miracle based on the stuff that I've been through. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. But Leo, I implemented the breathing aspect and changed what I was eating, and it just helped heal. I mean, of course, I had to have some surgeries, but
Hmm.
they were surprised, the doctors, um, how quickly I did heal. A lot of it is
Nice.
in your mind. It really truly
Hmm.
is, correct? And your breath.
Have you heard this statistic? Something like up to 90% of all doctors' visits are for stress-related ailments and conditions.
Yeah, it's definitely increasing. Yes, definitely.
So if that's the case, well, stress would be the kind of causal action right? So if we can affect stress directly and powerfully, then we can do a lot for our physical health.
Oh, definitely. And that's kind of what I was implying. We need to talk to schools. I mean, I should say
Mhm.
schools, the school system. I don't know the best
Mhm.
way to start, but I,
TikTok.
yeah, start with, there you go.
I told you about, I mean, that
Do
was probably
more.
mostly kids watching that, 300,000 views on that breath I told you about. I mean, these days it's like, I don't know, you could scale a lot more rapidly
Hey,
in the
that's a good
digital
point.
space.
We need to do that. We just need to be open to it. And like my mother, when I helped her, she had early stage like breast cancer. So I went to help her and I was showing her Leo how to do yoga stuff. But I just knew
Nice.
my mom needed to she was a widow at she needed that ass. She didn't have someone at home to help her. And
Mhm.
which as her daughter, I wanted to make sure I just knew my mom just needed I brought my sister with me, of course, too, not just me. But we just need to be more open to that. And there isn't, to me, a one thing that can fix, but your breathing
Mhm.
fits into that. That can help everybody. And you have to find a way to fit it into your day, right? And at a minimum at the end of the day, right? Help you fall asleep better. Your sleeping will be more consistent, maybe.
Yeah, and you'll like in my experience, you'll genuinely like it's a path to living a more embodied, authentic life, with more joy and peace and
I love your perspective. What is at least one takeaway for the listeners for what they can do?
mm.
Sorry.
On the breath. No,
Yeah.
no, I love that question. Um, you know, I feel like one of the gems that I really can't stress enough is you know after 10 years of being more than that in the kind of wellness industry, I came to realize that my constant striving to improve myself, to develop myself, was on some level, it was subconsciously it was fortifying this belief that I'm not enough. So, realizing that we're, you know, something like 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution, at least, and all of the incredible intelligence that's been evolved through that, we're already what we're looking for. That golden shadow is more real than anything. And so if we can come back to the moment where we're living here, we're not holding on to aspects of our identity that are tied up in regret or guilt and shame or fearing about the future, the more we can be in the moment, the more and it creates kind of a momentum, like a snowball effect. The more we're in the moment, the more we show up in life. And the more we show up, the bigger, the more authentic we show up, the easier it is to like ourselves and the better we treat ourselves. So for me, I use the breath awareness to practice more of that. And I can say without a doubt, the 2 years I've been practicing it, I've gone from having a kind of a deep sense of not enough to showing up so much bigger and like, wow, look at me. I am awesome.
That
So,
is really, really good. Very insightful. It's so important that you are worth it. You are the beauty, right? Or whatever
mhm.
you're are holding yourself back on. I think that is, I just really think it's really amazing the stuff that you have done and you've helped yourself and then you're the example, a great role model. You're walking the talk. Is that the right word?
Thanks, Brigitte. Yeah, well, I'm a wounded healer, so I'm doing what I'm doing because I
Right.
need it. So,
Right. Is that the right word? Walking the talk or I don't know what the word is.
mm-hmm.
But there's
Walking the talk. Yeah.
there's so many phrases out there. I just think this is really helpful. And this definitely is a reminder to me, get off your butt, Bridget, and go do some more breathing. I mean, seriously, I have to make jokes about it because my thing you mentioned, I was always wanted to be perfect. And so I was afraid to put things out there, right?
hmm
And because of being criticized for some reason, I don't know why I was,
hmm
but it's everybody's got their own thing.
And
But
that's pretty common. We all need to be accepted by the tribe, right? We need that to survive. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think you do need to have also being around other people is going to be really helpful. And that's why I'm just so glad that that we connected. And it definitely inspired me to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm doing it right and being Bridget and you're being Leo.
Yeah, do it, Bridget.
Right.
Be Bridget.
Be Brit. That's what I always say. So where can people learn more about you, Leo?
So there's, I would say, probably two different places people could go if they're wanting to check out the breathing app. That's at Ether. That's ETHR.one, ONE, Ether.one. And I just went live with a 7-day trial so people can get in there, no risk and check it out. And then if you're interested in any of the topics around the new creator and the book that I'm writing, my email list is pretty active. I usually send emails out on Saturdays, and they're basically like snippets and kind of like early access to a lot of the content in the book. So you could sign up for that at Leo Mars. That's with 2 R's, MARRS.com.
That's cool. And I'm going to have you back when you have your book out.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
can
let's do
talk
it.
about that. I just love
Yes.
people. I don't know, you putting your story out there. That is so important. Storytelling is something that I've had a great passion for and learning from other
Mhm.
people. I really appreciate your knowledge and your wisdom,
Yeah.
your time, Leo.
That was great chatting with you, Bridget. Thanks for having me on. I hope to do it again.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody.